Hello and welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, we're going to have a lot of fun. Here's what we're about to do. We're going to take a quick trip over Nosara Paradise Rentals over in Nosara, Costa Rica, and check in with Captain Craig Sutton and see what the fishing's like in Paradise. Then we're going to bring it back to Florida. We'll start up in the northeast corner with Captain David Voorhees, work our way all the way down the coast and around through the Keys and up the west coast. You know, we not only want fishing reports from these guys, but we love getting their ideas on the status of our fisheries right now. Some of them are in great shape. Some of them are having unexplainable population booms, and some of them continue to struggle. So it's going to be interesting to get everybody to weigh in, not only on how their fishing is today, but what their outlook is for the year 2021. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Sit back, have a cold beverage. We are about to get started with our trip through Fishing Paradise. Our trip started around the state. Hey, remember, tonight's podcast, along with all our podcasts, are brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Well, speaking of Nosara Paradise, let's go and check in with our buddy Captain Craig Sutton. Craigie, how are you, muchacho?
Man, I'm good. I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing fine, buddy. I see some good-looking pictures up on Facebook from Nosara.
Yeah, did you see those two marlin last night?
Yes, I did, and thank you for the new phone page.
Yeah. It's that one that smaller of those blues was a guy Javier Perez out of South Florida. He's a firefighter down there. He comes every year, so I was pumped when I saw he caught that.
I tell you, that fish had beautiful color, didn't it?
Oh my gosh, it sure did. One Dan Johnson caught was nice. Now Dan fishes with us about, I don't know, he usually does 4 or 5 trips a year with us and stays about a week or two and then fishes 4 or 5 times each time. But he's just a good angler, North Carolina guy out of Wanchese. But yeah, fishing's been good. The big yellowfin though are slowing up.
That's what you said.
I thought they would, you know. I thought they would, but that's fine. As long as the marlin come in and replace them, that's good for me.
Yes, sir. I know what you mean. Do you have any idea how many marlin you guys do a year?
Yeah, Matt's got the numbers. We chart them. Somewhere a little over 60. Just depends on the year.
I see. So out of, let's see, you're catching a marlin about every 5 trips, right?
Not quite that. Yeah. Let me see. That'd be 60. About every 5 trips.
So if somebody comes down there for a week, their chances of getting one are excellent.
Yeah, but, I get asked that question all the time. But, I can put you on a boat and give you a good quality crew, tackle, and equipment presentation, but we got to talk to that guy above us.
It's still fishing, isn't it?
It's still fishing. There's no lot of that. That's right.
Yeah.
I remember my one year I had a really, really good year down there. I finished in August with 13 releases and for just the month of August. And went back in November and did not see a fish for 41 trips.
Wow. Yep.
Straight. I mean, it was the next August before I saw another marlin. Now, we caught some on several of the trips I was out, but I'm limited. I can only fish in the afternoons, and really and truly from early December through May. Flight's early morning, generally speaking. I mean, you never know on a marlin, but just generally speaking, it's an early morning bite. So I missed the best time, but that's still okay.
Yeah, I tell you one thing. When those people leave the dock, they know they've been taken care of. I promise you that. Craigie, it's a humbling sport. Let's go back to being young boys right now, and somebody's standing in front of us with a set of golf clubs and somebody's standing in front of us with a fishing rod. Would we make the same choice?
Absolutely. I have no interest in golf. None whatsoever.
Yeah, but we could have picked an easier path, brother.
Well, you know what? Easy's not better.
Yep. Yes, sir. We learned that yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah. Still a beautiful day on the water and still has fish clean.
Yes, it was. Boss, we appreciate it so much. And Craigie, please tell me we can talk with you next week.
Absolutely. Look forward to it, Ricky.
Thank you. Craig Sutton from Nosara Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. Okay, our thanks to Craig Sutton for a great Costa Rican report where the yellowfin tuna are chewing. Oh, my goodness. And a couple of blue marlin to go with them. Now, let's start on Florida by getting up in the northeast corner and talk with our buddy, Captain David Voorhees. David, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing fine, Captain Ricky. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing wonderful. I got a belly full of steak. I just ate a steak. I'm sitting here talking to you, sipping on a cold drink. How do you think I'm doing?
Well, we're not going to talk about the Gators then, are we?
Oh, man. No, we're not.
Oh, I just learned it, didn't I? Oh, I'm so sorry, Rick.
Nice toss, Marcos. Yeah, nice toss, Marco. Yep. Gee whiz.
I tell you, Rick, the inshore fishing this week has been exceptional on this new moon for a couple of reasons, and I'd like to go over some of the reasons and to help people. You know, this show's not so much about giving fishing reports as it is about helping people to become better fishermen. So I like to do a little bit of both. The trout fishing this week fired off really nice. Plenty of redfish. Guys are catching plenty of sheephead around the rocks. There's black drum back in the creeks and stuff like that. And there's just really all around good inshore fishing, especially this week with that new moon we've had. Now, in Northeast Florida, you know, we talk a lot about the tides up here because, you know, I get guys that come up from South Florida and are over from the Gulf of Mexico, and they don't see the kind of tides that we get up here in Northeast Florida. They can be pretty extreme. For example, this week, the tides were actually running a foot lower than the average, than what they were predicted. So we had these extremely low tides, and it just so happens they were happening around the 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, late in the evening, which in wintertime, and I talk about this, you know, fishing is a lot about timing, Rick. It is all about timing. Being in the right place at the right time. And when it comes to tidal fishing, timing is everything. And I tell people, when you're learning this area up here, you better get your finger on the pulse of the tide. You better learn the tides up here. And you better start figuring out which tides are best and which tides are not as good, or what to do at high tide and what to do at low tide. Well, I can tell you, this time of year in the winter, when we get these cold waters, water temperature inshore right now is averaging about anywhere from 60 to 65 degrees, below 60 right now. We're seeing the water temperature. That's nice and cold for us. Last few winters, we haven't seen water temperatures get very cold. They've been staying pretty warm these last few winters, but this winter we got a little colder water temperature. When you get these extremely low tides on these new moons, late in the evening, what's going to happen? Sure enough, these reds are going to move out of these creeks. They're going to look for these deep holes, and they're just going to go. They're going right to these holes, and they're going to stack up in these holes. And it's not uncommon to find, some deep 10-foot holes in some of these creeks that are absolutely just loaded up with the redfish. And that's what we saw this week. As far as helping you out with the tide, I can tell you, when you look at most tide charts, all they give you is the prediction. That's what the tide is. The tide chart you see is a prediction. So if you really want to understand the tide, the best thing to do is to get into the NOAA weather app, get into their tide chart for your area. Up here, it's Mayport, and then when you find their tide chart, what it's going to give you is two lines. It's going to give you the prediction, and then the other is going to give you a red line, which is what the tide is actually doing. In other words, it's going to give you the reading off the data buoy that NOAA Weather's getting their information from, and you get to see that. That's very important.
That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yep. Yeah. Because, when we're talking seeing, it was a foot lower than what was predicted, Rick, at some points this week. That's big. That's way off. That's really, really off from what they predicted. And sometimes winds can do that. I mean, you get an east wind or a west wind, it can affect that tide over a foot in Northeast Florida. So, like I said, you really want to figure out the tides up here. I hate to harp on it, but if there's one thing that's going to make you a better angler, you got to get your finger on that pulse. Wintertime fishing, I talk about this, Rick. I can't talk about it enough. This is the time of year I love it. You know why? Because I get to sleep in, Rick. I don't have to get up really early and go fishing. I like fishing the later part of the day. In other words, starting around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, even sometimes 1 o'clock, fishing late into the evening. Water temperatures are going to be rising. If you get the low tide happening like we did this week, late in the evening, man, it can be bonanza. And let me tell you, it was a bonanza this week. Phenomenal red fishing, trout fishing, and that's my tip, my information for today. And you really have to figure those tides out, people, in Northeast Florida if you want to be a good angler up here.
Figure the tides out, and the best tide you're looking for right now, David, is an afternoon low where you can fish in the holes in the creeks.
Yeah,
is that right? Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
I do for the redfish. Now the trout really been good this week, and I like that moving water for the trout. And we would start the day out at higher water. When it was outgoing, we looked for some points. Now I've been talking about the birds. You know, the birds are a real good signal this time of year. They're gonna show you a lot of times where these fish are feeding. It's not always a give me though. Just because there's no birds there, that don't mean the trout aren't there. So what I look for the trout this time of year, and that water's really ripping like it did these last few days, and I mean it was honking out of here, is I look for these drop-offs or these points that go from really, really shallow water and just drop off into deep water. These trout, especially the big ones, like to come in behind these drop-offs, and they catch the stuff that's getting flushed over the shallow water that's fallen into the deep water. In other words, if you can imagine it, probably to the fish, it's like a waterfall of bait just coming down towards them. All they do, they face into that current, and they're going to just pick things off as it comes down to them. And that was exactly what happened today. We went out, we caught lots of trout on that outgoing tide. When the water got almost to the bottom of the tide, we slipped and barely got into some of these creeks. You will get in trouble on these extremely low tides, so you better know a creek you can slip into with your boat. Every boat's different. We went back in the creek. I got this little hole. It's about 10 feet deep. We fished it, bang, 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 a bunch of little rat reds. But you know what? I didn't give up. I told these guys, let's just keep going through it. We're going to keep catching fish. But I bet you there's some big ones in there. Rick, no sooner did I say that, bam, young lady on the boat, she hooked into a monster. We ended up with a 30-inch, 10-pound red, and it was just one of the prettiest reds. I'll send you a picture of it later today, Rick. But it was just, it couldn't have worked out any better as far as the way I predicted the day would go, the way I told my clients the day would go, and the way the day went. Everything lined up perfectly.
Yeah, what a great day that is. I tell you, I'm thankful for David, we had a calm day offshore yesterday. I'll take every calm day every winter that I can. It's funny, my mate that fishes with me quite a bit, Lonnie Pitts, says that he lives for when we leave the dock in our foul weather gear and our wool caps, and we're all snuggled up because it's gonna be good fishing almost always when you get a calm day in the wintertime. And it has been. We had a couple of trips this week. The triggerfish bite has been just phenomenal. I don't know when I've seen it better. It's been so good. The trolling's okay. I'm a hardcore troller. I couldn't get off of it yesterday. But David, I've started something on my boat, and is it going to grow to other boats? I don't know, but I know it works for me. When we get on the boat, I'm like, does everybody want a blackfin tuna? Yeah, I want one. Does anybody really need more than one? No, because as you know, David, tuna doesn't freeze great. And so
it's only good fresh.
Right. So I said, all right, we're going to stay on the troll until we've caught our tuna. Everybody on the boat's caught a tuna, and then we're going to go do something else. And we did. Before 12 o'clock, we had our tuna for everybody on the boat. And that's the way I'm going to start doing things, David. If you're coming fishing with me and And, when we run into a school of cobia, I'm sorry, you're going home with one, regardless of how many are there, and that's.
Rick, I totally agree with you on doing stuff like that. Because, if you really want the quality of the fish, don't stick it in your freezer.
No.
My God, you can go anywhere and get frozen fish, and I tell people that even with the redfish, it's like, how do we freeze? Don't freeze it. It's fresh. Eat the fish fresh. It's so much better than frozen fish. Why freeze it?
It's better, David, and whether we like it or not, whether we want to admit it or not, we now have too many boats on the water for everybody to take all the fish they want. It's just the way it is. All right, so let's start focusing on the experience, taking the fish we want to eat fresh that week, and we're going to have to let the rest go. It's just how it is, or else we're going to have to stop fishing and go do something else. I hated it because right alongside the fourth tuna came the first sailfish, and we didn't get him, unfortunately. But I'm thinking, maybe I'll stay on the troll and see if I can pick a sailfish or two, which I really wanted to. But nope. I had already made my decision. Once everybody had a tuna, we were going bottom fishing. We did. Everybody went home with tuna. Everybody went home with triggerfish. Everybody went home with beeliner. We were done, cleaned up before anybody else made it to the dock. That's my new attack plan, David, and that's how it's going to be. But in terms of offshore fishing, I don't see any calm days this week. But if there were, there's very few wahoo around. There's plenty of blackfin tuna around, and there's a pretty good handful of sailfish. Buddy, please tell me we can get another report from you next week.
Absolutely, Rick. I know when you offshore guys can't make it, the inshore guys, usually we can find a hole or a little creek to get into to get out of this wind. But you're right, it does look like this wind's going to be picking up and getting pretty gnarly next couple of days, probably laying down by Wednesday.
David, help me teach them. Get those boys to take home a redfish to eat fresh and let the other one go.
There you go, man. I agree with you, Rick. That's good policy, buddy. Maybe I'll adopt it to my boat.
Thank you, David. Have a good day. Captain David Borges from the northeast section of Florida. Now we're going to travel down south a little bit. We're off to a good start, but we need to find out what's going on around the Space Coast with none other than Captain Jim Ross.
I'm doing fantastic, Rick. How are you doing this week?
Good. You sounded, buddy. You sound like your back's feeling better. Tell me how your fishing's going.
Well, the fishing's going pretty good, too. Now, I personally had not spent a whole lot of time offshore here lately, but there's been some pretty good bites going on out there. We've got cobia, we've got king mackerel, we've got blackfin tuna, we've got mutton snapper, we've got mangrove snapper, we've got lane snapper. So it doesn't really matter which port you go out of. If you start at about 90 to 100 feet, you start with the snappers and the kingfish and the cobia. And you move on out until you hit the blue water edge, and then you start picking up the blackfin tunas and an occasional dolphin, wahoo, that kind of thing. But the blackfin tunas have been pretty strong here, just as strong as the cobia have been on some of the spots. So it's been a good overall, last weekend. And those couple of calm days where the guys could get offshore, they did really well.
Hey, Jim, I got a question for you. And we have solicited our listeners to do this, and I'm so glad that this guy did. We had a guy call in and say, Rick's always preaching conservation and take as many fish as you need for, to eat fresh and all this. Would we be in favor of a 5-year ban on tournaments? Because, like, say, kingfish tournaments, for example, put so much pressure on the kingfish for that 2 or 3 weeks while guys are getting ready, and then they're harvesting all those fish and all that. Do you think that go ahead.
I don't agree with that. And here's why I don't agree with that. Let's say you've got 100 boat field, okay? SKA, 100 boat field, 100 of the top anglers in the entire Southeast, and they're out there chasing king mackerel. And they each come back with, let's just say, 3 fish.
Okay.
3 fish per boat. So they just, in one weekend, pulled 300 king mackerel out of that ocean. And everybody goes, oh, my goodness, that's a ton of fish. How can we be decimating the population like that? Let me explain something to you. If you haven't been on 8A or Pelican Flats or the Cracker Ridge or the High Bar or the Pines out of Sebastian or the Party Grounds out of Ponce, if you haven't been out there, lately, you haven't seen what decimation really looks like, because the commercial fleet gets 75 head per boat, not 300 per tournament per 100 boats. They get 75 fish per boat right now, and everybody's coming in with a limit. So to say that a tournament puts the kind of pressure on, I don't agree whatsoever. It doesn't. It comes nowhere even close to what the daily pressure is from the commercial fleet. And the crazy thing about it is, when there's most of the year it's 50 fish, but we haven't reached our quote unquote limit for the year, so they raised it to 75 fish per boat. And to me, if you haven't already met your quota, or you're not even coming close to meeting your quota, doesn't that mean that you probably ought to look at some better conservation methods so that those boats that are out there doing that should be coming in and reaching their quotas towards the end of the year, not opening it up so that they can bring in more fish?
Right.
That makes zero sense whatsoever.
Jim, I've argued.
Jim Ross's book of conservation.
I've argued that with gag grouper forever. Okay. We're running into too many red snapper incidentally while we're bottom fishing. So there's too big a dead discards, so you can't fish for them.
There's an easy one. I have that figured out.
Hold on. Let me finish.
Okay.
But at the same time, you're raising the limit on gag grouper, the bag limit on gag grouper, because we haven't met the quota. And the reason we haven't met the quota is because there's not enough grouper. So,
right.
So what your actions are telling me is, you can't fish for red snapper because there are too many, and you need to go fish for more gag grouper because there's not enough. That's what the actions are telling me. But let me tell you why I agree with you. All right. Do you remember when amberjack got shot out of existence?
Yes.
And we went through that whole craze with blackened amberjack and all that.
Yeah.
Was that a real big deal publicly? No.
No, not really.
No,
it really wasn't.
But after we started having kingfish tournaments, what happened to the roller net boats in the kingfish fleet? Oh, they had to go away because people went crazy over kingfish. We are only going to protect the animals that we love. That's unfortunate, but that's how it is. And the fact that 300 kingfish, you use that number, die in a weekend to 100 boats fishing, those people are now very tuned in to how we're doing on kingfish. And they're never going to let those roller net boats come back. And they're never going to let us fish kingfish into extinction. And so for that reason, I want to see everybody continue to be engaged in kingfish. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So what was your solution on too many dead discards on red snapper?
Oh, it's real simple. Because I can't even catch flounder at one of my favorite flounder spots right now because there's too many red snapper on my flounder spot. That's in less than 90 feet of water. And so my solution is simply allow people to keep that one red snapper instead of creating a dead discard, which is a dead, unused part of the resource.
Of course.
It's a dead fish, whether it's in a fish box on ice, making somebody happy that they got that fish and took it back to the fillet table, or whether they release it and the fish dies from barotrauma, or the fish dies because it got eaten by a barracuda, or the fish dies because a sandbar shark ate it. If you want to go bottom fishing and you want to keep a red snapper, everybody on the boat, give them a limit of one fish.
Sure.
That's going to be basically what's going to happen is you're going to pull up to the reef. You got a 6-man charter. 6 lines are going to go down. 6 lines are going to come up. 6 red snapper go in the box. And you go, we're done bottom fishing. Put the bottom rods away. Put the trolling rods out. Here we go, boys.
Of course. You and I both
eliminated every one of those dead discards. You've eliminated them because they're 6 dead fish, but they're dead and they're going to a happy angler. They're not going to a disgruntled angler who's frustrated because he has to put that 12 to 18 pound red snapper back overboard and then watch the barracuda or the sandbar eat it when it gets down about 10 feet.
And oh, by the way,
and then he has to pull it, and then he has to pull another one up because he still hadn't gotten through the 27 you have to wade through to get the one grouper bite.
And oh, by the way, if the savvy anglers, the guys that knew what they were doing, if they wanted a big one, I don't like the big ones. I like the 8-pounders myself. But if you wanted a big one, you would drop a whole Boston mackerel or a Daytona grunt or something to catch a big one. You wouldn't sit there and
pick a chunk of barracuda, big chunk of bonita, any kind of big chunk.
You wouldn't fish with cigar minnows and pick through 53-pound chickens to get your one 14-pounder. You'd put down a big bait, you catch a big fish, and you put your bottom rod away. You and I both know that we could go one snapper. I think they ought to close gag grouper, Jimmy. I think they're in real trouble. But and
I'll be honest with you, people may not like it. I think they need to close black sea bass too. We have none down here.
Shut your face.
There may be some in the Mid-Atlantic states. You can't catch one here.
Jimmy Ross, you shut your face. Okay? No, you know me. If they're in trouble, I want them closed. But I think
we honestly struggle to catch sea bass here.
Jimmy, I think that's a water temperature thing because I don't think it's gotten cold enough because we've had some banner seasons just 100 miles north of you. So I think your water may be too warm for them. But if they're in trouble, you know me, I'm the first one to yell to close. But anyway, my point is you could go one snapper, 5 vermilions, 5 sea bass, 5 triggerfish, and you wouldn't have to look at it again for 10 years to see how we were doing.
Yeah, you wouldn't.
We'd be fine.
Because all of those species would come into balance.
That's exactly right. How's your inshore fishing? We got to wrap it up here.
Horrible.
Really?
Don't go.
Really?
Dead fish in the Indian River, dead fish in the Banana River. Mosquito Lagoon's got a couple of spots that are holding some fish that people are still catching, but for the most part, this algae bloom is dying off with this cooling water temperatures, and we're having issues. So anywhere from Titusville to Melbourne, don't waste your time.
I'm
if you're
so
fish
sorry.
In the inshore waters, hit the Mosquito Lagoon north, or go from about the Melbourne Causeway south towards Sebastian into Vero and Wabasso area.
Holy smokes, I am really sorry to hear that. Now, Jim, how long does that usually take to come back?
Well, the first fish started dying 2 weeks ago. This past week, all of the Cocoa Beach canals and Sykes Creek canals started dying. So Merritt Island, Cocoa Beach, Satellite Beach, all are seeing those issues right now. So I don't know. I don't know how long it's going to take to come back. It's going to take. What'll have to happen is the oxygen level is going to have to raise back up for a long enough period of time for fish to swim back into those areas. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we're past it. Hopefully the fish kill's not any more severe than what it has been. It's already been bad enough. Hopefully it's not any more severe. Hopefully we're going to come on the rebound. We've got some more cooling temperatures with this next two fronts actually that are coming through this week. And we hope to see some reoxygenation of the water from that wind associated agitation.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Well, I hope it happens. I hope things get better for you soon, and I hope we can talk to you next week and get another report. All right, thanks to Captain Jim Ross, and man, condolences on the big fish kill in Mosquito Lagoon. It's just, golly, I don't know what they're going to do to clean that place up. They got to get that algae bloom out of there. But let's talk about a better place. Let's stop in Stuart, Florida, the sailfish capital of the world, and talk with Captain John Earhart. John, how are you?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you, buddy. How's the fishing been in Stuart?
The offshore fishing this week's been pretty good. It seems like the mahi fishing slowed down a little bit. We're still catching a few here and there. We've kind of made up for it with kingfish and wahoo. So if you're not getting a lot of mahi bites and you're getting clipped off a lot, you might want to switch over to some wire rigs, because there's been a lot of kingfish around. They've been anywhere from 5 to 35 pounds, so there's some good ones mixed in. We've been getting a few sailfish in that same general area as well. Not a lot of them, but they're, you can expect 1 to 3 bites a day on average right now. If you're not trolling, the bottom fishing's been very steady for mutton snappers and vermilion snappers, on cut bait and whole sardines. So, there's plenty of action both on the surface and the bottom right now, and there's been a few cobia around as well.
Gotcha. All right. How about inshore?
The inshore fishing's been pretty steady for snook this week. With season closing, I'm going to focus more on black drum, sheep's head, triple tail right now. There's been some snappers in the river too, both mangroves and cuberas, so that's been kind of nice. And there's been an occasional tarpon around here and there as well. So, there's plenty of action right now, both inshore and offshore.
That sounds outstanding, John. That really does. I assume as these cold fronts start stacking up and coming through, your sail fishing will improve?
Yeah, I would expect sail fishing to get better the next couple weeks and the pompano fishing to get better inshore. So the two things I'd be looking for in the future would be sailfish and pompano.
Perfect. Well, there's still some pompano here, so they're headed your way, buddy. Hey, listen, we really appreciate it. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
We'll talk with you next week. Captain John Earhart from Chaos and Mayhem Charters down in Stuart, Florida. And if you guys want to book a sailfish trip for this winter, you need to get a hold of Captain John soon.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to its name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with Menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat Facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Our thanks to Captain John Earhart for a great Stuart report where the sailfish bite is slowly picking up. It ain't red hot yet, but it's on the way. Now, let's jump straight down to Islamorada. I'm ready to get warm for a few days. It's chilly up here in Northeast Florida. And check in with our buddy Captain Nick Stanczyk from the Broad-Minded. Nick, how are you?
Hanging in, Rick. How you doing?
Doing outstanding. How's that baby girl?
She's doing good. She's sleeping a little bit longer and getting a little bit bigger each day.
Wait, how long is she sleeping?
Well, now she's been doing some 4 to 5 hour stretches. That's good.
No.
Up every 2 or 3 hours.
Put her on the phone right away. I need to talk to her. I'll take care of that for you, Cap. All right, tell me how your fishing's been, Nick.
I got out the last 3 days and, over the weekend and whatnot, and we had one swordfish bite each day, so there wasn't a lot of them around, but luckily we caught them all. And we captured at least one. We kept one about 75 pounds. The last day we caught one just under 190 pounds, so that was a nice fish. So we caught some blackfin tuna. We caught a couple queen snappers. We did a little bit of deep dropping in the shallow or two. Caught some yellow eye snapper, nice camp. So we're mixing it up a little bit too, just because the swordfish bite wasn't red hot, but we were fortunate to catch the bites we had.
Gotcha. So there's not a lot of swordfish around, but fortunately they're biting aggressively, and you've been able to hook up 3 of them. You say the biggest one was just shy of 190?
Yep, we had a 188-pounder yesterday.
That's a good one. That is a fine one. Well, Cap, that's outstanding. Have you heard anything in the backcountry down there?
Yeah, there's some Spanish mackerel are showing up. So, out by Sprigger Bank in the bay there, they're starting to catch some Spanish mackerel, and they should just get thicker and thicker. And then they've been picking away at the snook and red up in the Everglades. Not every day's been red hot. My brother had a couple good days and a couple slower ones, but overall, he's been doing pretty decent. And also, another cool story was the Fearless Captain Joe Hendricks on a 27-foot conch. He fishes offshore. It was a junior sailfish tournament on Marana, and they won that with his kid, and his daughter caught her first 3 ever sailfish. They caught 7 sailfish in 2 days, so we were happy to see him win that with his family, and some of their friends were with him too.
That's the best. That is the best. Outstanding. Hopefully those kids are hooked for life now. Well, Nick, we appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
Yep, we'll be here. Give us a call, Rick. Good hearing from you.
Absolutely. Good. Keep them straight down there at Bud and Mary's. I know there's lots going on down there this time of year as the snowbirds descend. Our thanks to Captain Nick Stancic and the Broad-Minded. Congratulations on that 188-pound sword yesterday. That's just another day at the office for that boy, let me tell you. Let's swing around the state a little bit to the 10,000 Islands and talk with our buddy Captain Steve Dahl. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Rick. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Tell me about, I heard rumors of a bad happening going on down there.
Yeah, we are, a few years ago, our region and the Southwest region incurred quite a bit of negative effects from red tide, and we're starting to kind of see that right now. And nowhere near as drastic as we saw several years ago, but our waters are starting to cloud. You might see some, tannic water more so out in the Gulf than you've ever, normally see this time of year. Usually our waters in the wintertime are pretty gin clear. There was a really late release this year out of Lake Okeechobee back in November. Usually takes about 30 days to get down to the Coosawhatchee or through the Coosawhatchee River out by Annabelle and Fort Myers Beach, and based on tides, that'll kind of draw that down to our area. And what we're seeing is the northernmost part of our region, kind of Gordon's Pass, south to about Cape Romano and creeping around Cape Romano right now. We've got really dark water. I almost call it kind of copper. It's like a copper cloudy water, if you will. And based on tides and winds, that could push, into, wrap right around Cape Romano and then push into 10,000 Islands, part of our region. So, we're cautiously optimistic. Obviously, is a, peak time of year for charter boat captains and recreational fishermen. You got families in town you're trying to entertain. So, Florida Wildlife Commission does a pretty good job of keeping everybody updated through their program with red tide. You can get alerts on your phone. Just a simple, subscribe thing on their website, and, check periodically with it. But, exercise some caution. I'm generally not as affected by it over the years. Maybe I'm getting older, but yesterday was a little tough on me. I was off the water today, but, it hit me pretty hard. And I was fishing in the northern part of our region, and I had to come through it in the nearshore waters to get home, and it was thick. It was definitely, it's patchy, there's bouts of it, it's airborne. Anybody with, respiratory issues, asthma, definitely feel it a little bit more so. But, we're cautiously optimistic. We've heard, some fish kills, we're starting to see a few fish up on the beaches, some, all fish are important in my opinion, but some of the little bit more non-desirables are kind of starting to float up, and some bait fish. So we're, crossing our fingers that this will be kind of short-lived. The pumping is kind of stopped out of Okeechobee at this point. So we're kind of seeing the effects. And we're also on a big warming trend right now with, 84 degrees down here today. So that doesn't really help. A couple cold fronts could help us with that as well. So we're just staying optimistic, after what we endured a few years ago. We certainly don't want to see it come back by any means to that level. But we're staying pretty optimistic, So that's kind of where, that's kind of the doldrum news, Rick. I wish I had better news on that front, but we're kind of faced with that right now.
Yeah, wow, that's tough. And as much as you live in paradise, it can go bad in a hurry, as you and I know. And fortunately, nature has adapted. As far as we know, red tide is a natural occurrence. It has gone on forever, and fish have recovered forever. So that's
After the last one I had said, I remember having went for a boat ride with another area captain. And we're seeing, ecological genocide to some degree in our opinions, wondering what we're going to do for a living down the road. This is several years back when the big one hit, and we sat down and we went to breakfast on the water place, and it's like, what do you think? I said, I'm going to trust that nature finds a way.
Yeah.
and it does. It's pretty amazing. I mean, our fishery is different since the last red tide. It's kind of changed things. I know up in Greg's region, up in the southwest, that fishery has definitely changed the Estero Bay and Pine Island area, and for the better. It's you got to look at the positive of it. It is a naturally recurring thing. Everybody wants to, finger point in this game.
Right.
And that's not the answer by any means. It is natural. It doesn't help that all that fresh water does come out. But it's not the folks at Lake Okeechobee's fault. It's not, the natural watershed of Florida has been altered. And, this happens on the East Coast of Florida as well.
Yeah.
And so it's, something that, there's been a ton of money thrown to, and we're hopefully going to have some solutions for our future, and that's really what we need to hang our hat on and just stay optimistic that's going to happen. That being said, it's not all gloom and doom. There's fish to be caught. Yesterday we caught 3 triple tail, and you heard me say I haven't caught triple tail with some consistency in a while, and the fish are further out. It's just that simple. They're going to get away from that, off-colored water, and we had to go out a little bit further yesterday. We were, 35, 40 feet of water, when typically we're fishing these fish 15 to 25 feet of water. And, water's still a little bit, not as gin clear as it usually is this time of year, but, if a, triple tail is laying on the rope, even 5, 6 feet down, you could still see them if you push a little further offshore.
Sure.
And what folks in our area are I'm hearing a lot of buzz, like, where are all the crab traps this year? Folks, they're further offshore this year.
Yeah.
These guys have pushed farther and farther offshore than they ever have. They're in a little bit different orientation than they've been in years past in our area. Once you find out the pattern, it's pretty simple to follow, but, it's not all gloom and doom. There's some triple tail out there. Our lane snapper on the nearshore wrecks and reefs and have been unbelievable. I've never seen them that close to shore. So keep that in mind. We're not really having any issues on the 10,000 island side. So the redfish and snook fishing is still really good. The trout fishing is unbelievable. We're right in our wintertime, trout fishing bonanza, which has always been a staple for us down this time of year. So I don't want to preface what I said by, saying this is all gloom and doom, because it's not. You just have to be creative and be mindful where this is, and, try to avoid it, fish around it. It's really that simple. And it also gives you a great opportunity to explore some of these other regions in our state that aren't affected by it. So, do some traveling this holiday season, maybe go over to the East Coast, run up a little bit north, and I'm thinking of booking a charter with this great guy up in Jacksonville that I've been trying to fish with for a little bit.
Hey, let me tell you something. This great guy ain't cheap. All right, if we go fishing together, let me tell you something.
If we go discount, come on.
if we go fishing together, okay?
Yeah.
We are taking our triggerfish to the Palms Fish Camp right around the corner from me. They're going to cook them up for us. They are going to give us fries, and you are going to buy me a Diet Coke.
Okay.
So I told you, I may be cheap, but I ain't free.
Captain Kevin Merritt, who's now retired, is a Florida Sportsman staple for years down in our region, and he once told me, he said, "Kid, a good charter isn't cheap, and a cheap charter isn't good."
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's why my trips are cheap, because they ain't good. But let me tell you something.
But I'll take you up on it.
Let me tell you something what I did yesterday, Steve. And all I'm doing is making rules for my boat. I'm not trying to shove this down anybody's throat. I'm just telling you that's what I've decided. Okay? Mm-hmm. We went offshore yesterday, and I was really hoping we'd get some shots at sailfish. We only got one, and unfortunately, Stevie Wonder was my mate yesterday, and that didn't work out so good. But anyway, we started catching tuna, and we caught the first tuna, and these are 12 to 18s. These aren't big tuna, but they're solid. And we caught the first one, and I asked the angler before I stuck him, I said, "You want this tuna?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay," and I stuck him. And then the next guy caught one, the next guy caught one, the next guy caught one. They all wanted one. I said, "All right, let's put the trolling rods up. Let's go do something different." I'm going to start making my own. Steve, I don't trust the South Atlantic Council anymore, and I've decided that the limits on my boat are going to be what I set them at. Now, obviously, I'm not going to do anything illegal. I'm not going to suddenly declare red snapper open. But doggone it, I am tired of bringing in a box full of fish and then, no, I got plenty. No, I got plenty. No, you take it. No, I got plenty. No, you take it. Wait a minute. We don't have enough fish left to do that anymore, Steve.
You know, it's funny you say this. I'm not to extend this, but 2 days ago, had a great repeat customer of mine. Had 3 generations of his family on board, himself, his son, and his grandson. And his grandson had never fished with me before, great kid. And we got in them, I mean, everything, fast and furious, just what you're kind of talking about. And fish are hitting the box, and they want to load up. They were freezable fish, no problem. And we're halfway home, and the grandfather comes to me, and he says, "Hey, Steve, I didn't realize how many fish we had. We're not going to take those."
Mm-hmm.
And I was quiet, and this has happened, I think, to every charter boat captain in Florida. And we got back to the dock. I cleaned it up, and shook hands, pleasantries, good meeting the family, blah blah blah. And I had half their catch sitting on my fillet table yet to clean, and I sent them on their way. And I said, "Steve, you got a minute?" And and he said, "Sure. What do you got?" And I said, he goes, "I could tell you're upset." And I said, "Well, why do you think I'm upset?" Like, because we didn't take the whole catch. I said, "I have no problem with you keeping as many fish as legally possible. That's your right to do, but we've talked, in the past of selective harvest and things like that. And in the moment, that heat of the moment when you're catching them and fish are hitting the box, you can kind of forget what you got in there.
It's hard to stop. Yep, it is.
It's hard to stop. And as a captain, it's kind of our responsibility to do that. And so I actually apologize to him because I didn't reiterate it enough, I think, that day. But it's hard for a captain to, but just, if you're going to hire a charter boat captain, just understand, just that these, we start talking about renewable resources and, things of that avail. I mean, my rule, that it's loose, not a hard rule on my boat, but I always like to tell people, hey, fresh fish are better than frozen fish, regardless if they freeze well or not. Allow yourself maybe to give some away to, maybe a neighbor or something like that. But, to absolutely stock the cooler is not the approach, and there's a mindset of some people out there, because they feel that's the value, of going on a fishing charter or fishing in general. But, I just encourage everyone, you've heard me say the word selective harvest a million times, in our talks, throughout the years. And I'm a big advocate of that. There's, we have to be responsible stewards of our resource. It's just that simple. And it's everyone's responsibility.
Hey, Steve, you know what those fish are?
What's that?
Your business partners.
No, they are. They really are.
They are.
I mean, that's a great way. I've never looked at it that way, honestly. I've had a bunch of different analogies for that, but I've never used that one, and I'm going to use that.
Try and run your business without them and see how you do.
Yeah, it's really, they always say your business is only as good as, the people you hire. And, if we don't have any employees, if you will, swimming.
They're your partners, and you better take care of them. Yep.
Exactly.
All right, Cap, as always, I appreciate it so much. I'm so sorry this red tide has descended on you. I hope it's short-lived and light.
Hopefully next week when we talk, we got some better news on that front, but I'll update everybody next week.
Nothing would make me happier. Thank you, Steve.
All right, be well.
Take care, buddy. Captain Steve Dahl from the 10,000 Islands. Steve, gosh, it's tough luck for him with that red tide. I hope that doesn't stay. Steve and all of our action spotters every week are brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara, Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. And let's move on around the coast a little bit to the southwest area and check in with Captain Greg Stamper.
I'm right here, Rick.
Do we have a red tide report?
Yeah, we've had some splotches in our area. The back bay had one day for me personally where I definitely got into it, where I could, I started to feel that little tickle in my throat.
Yeah.
And, the filters I had in my live well, they didn't all die, but some of them definitely die. When you see they're jumping and they're splashing around in there like there's a problem, you know that there is a problem. So I did have one day, unfortunately, that I did have to deal with it. The good part is even on that day, we went to the very back. And we had a fantastic day of fishing, from everything from juvenile tarpon, snook, redfish. All the trout were pushed to the back, snappers and sheepshead. I mean, we had good fishing even on that particular day. So, with that said, I'm not seeing anything, dying. I'm not seeing mullet, which would really be a concern of mine this time of year as they're going into their spawn. Our mullet run, as you guys call on the East Coast, is much later here.
Uh-huh.
It happens now. This is when all of our mullet go out and spawn. So I'm really hoping I don't see any of those things floating around out here in the future. But luckily, I guess on one end, this is the only time we've actually experienced it this entire year, and we're cooling off. So things will get better in a much quicker range than if this was happening in, say, August.
Yep. Well, good deal. Good deal. I'm glad that this ain't worse than it is. Now, I'm a little surprised, and it's just the way I'm drawing it up in my mind here, Greg, that the fish would move to the back of the bay. Wouldn't that possibly trap them where they couldn't get out?
No. See, in our area, where you use Estero Bay, you could use the Caloosahatchee River, you could use some of the parts in the northern areas of Pine Island that are on the east wall. We have quite a few rivers and creeks that are spring fed that come out and dump into our estuary. Mm-hmm. So in general sense, that water is never really going in. It's always coming out, pushing out for the most part in those general areas. So if you're fishing near the mouth of rivers, creeks, some of these drainage areas that come from our local, communities, that water has a tendency, especially after it's rained quite a bit, to just come out. You don't get a lot of tidal influx that goes up these rivers and creeks that far. It really turns brackish. And there are times, actually, Rick, where we'll catch bass and gar and things like that in those areas. So it kind of tells you what it's all about as far as the salinity levels in those areas.
I see. Well, that makes perfect sense. Well, does it seem to be getting worse? Is it about the same, or is it letting up already?
We had, last time we talked, it was about a day or two later, I was out running for triple tail, which we did find a few small ones. We did catch one nice fish that was over 10 pounds. And I did see some splotches that, I said that's got to be red tide. It's coming and going. But they were in very small local spots. We did have these very, very, very low winter tides this week. So when the water did come in, it came in fast and strong. So if there was anything near shore, it did creep into the back a little bit. But even the times we fish, Rick, near the front, I didn't fish in the very front, like around our passes, but near them, we still caught pompano, mackerel, ladyfish, etc. So it's not to the point where it's going to be completely detrimental at this point.
Gotcha.
The guys who fished in the near shore waters this week did have a little bit more issues with it. Some of my crabbing friends, for blue crabs and whatnot, and stone crabs, did talk about it being in some of the areas that they were fishing for their crabs and whatnot within 5, 6, 7, 8 miles. So they did see a lot more of it than what I saw. The positive is the offshore guys went out there. They did everything they should have done. Caught a lot of red grouper in 70 feet of water. Caught gag groupers, all the snappers they wanted, and had really good trips. So I'm hoping by the time we talk to you the next week and a half or so, we got one more front coming through here in about 3 days, 2 days. Saw a little front line today, but we'll see what happens. As far as fishing in the back bays where I'm at, it's been good. No fish kills. To catch pompano, somewhat close to the front is a very good sign. As far as the redfish, snook, and even a juvenile tarpon, that was not a problem this week at all. So hopefully that continues and we can move forward and get into 2021, Rick. I'm so ready for it. You have no idea.
I'm telling you, I don't drink. I've never been an alcohol consumer of any kind. 12/01/2021. That might break that streak, Greg. I'm telling you, I'm ready to put this one behind us.
I'll toast one with you that night. Please.
I'm with you, brother. Thanks so much, Greg. Can we talk to you next week?
You got it, my friend.
All right, brother. Take care. All right, thanks to Captain Greg Stamper for a great Southwest report. Now, it sounds like the red tide's not as bad in his area. Let's pull up a little bit further north to Captain Ray Markham and find out what's going on in the West Central. Ray, you seen any red tide up there?
No, sir.
Good.
No red tide. However, according to the reports the most recent one that we had, there's background levels, and that doesn't really mean anything because there's almost always background levels of red tide. So, I'm not considering that really a factor at all in what we got going on here. But kind of a gnarly looking day today. It was a little bit of rain early, then it came out for a little sun, and then we had a little breeze, and then we had fog, and it's like, oh boy, I can hardly wait till tomorrow morning.
Buddy, I'm gonna tell you what now. Yesterday morning, on a Sunday, one of the busiest ports in Florida. I live about 2.5 miles upriver, and I don't have a radar, and I had to get my way out in as thick a fog as you ever want to see. And if I had hair, it'd be standing on end when I got to do that.
Well, I'm sure you probably just follow your plot trail in, right?
I do, but your problem with that is, Ray, that tanker ain't on your plot chart, Cap. I mean, he's, all those other boats aren't on that chart plotter.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I hear that. Well, when you hear 5 big beaks, because they got radar.
Yep.
and I mean, the heck out of the road.
Yep, that's exactly right. That is. Well, tell me about your fishing.
Well, okay. Well, we're doing actually really well with trout. A big surprise. I mean, a lot more fish than I would have assumed at this early in the. Well, shoot, it's not even winter yet. But usually I don't see this kind of action until like late January, February, and then especially March and April. But it's been pretty decent for trout. And it's not like they're everywhere. When you find them, you find a bunch. Same thing kind of with snook. We're finding a lot of snook up the canals around the Manatee River, and the fishing's been really hot for them. I'm throwing DOA shrimp for the snook, and they won't leave alone. I'm working a lot of residential canals that have good depth, and a lot of these places are anywhere from 8 to about 12 feet deep. Super low tides like we have in the morning, like tomorrow we'll have pretty close to a foot below mean low. Same thing pretty much today and probably the next day as well. But we do have some rain anticipated for Wednesday. So tomorrow's the day for us. So I'm glad we moved that to tomorrow instead of on Wednesday. So it's all good. As far as the guys offshore, they are absolutely wrecking gag grouper.
How about
actually
that?
red grouper but I mean they're starting at about 50 feet. 50 to 70 feet is about all you want. And most of the guys that I'm talking to, they're getting their limits, and sometimes they're sorry they put one in the fish box because the next one, first one's 26, second one's 28, and they got them in the fish box, and suddenly they get a 32.
Too bad.
Too bad.
Yep. Too bad. So sad. Goodbye, 32.
Yep. But there's some nice fish out there, and you don't have to go that far to get them. So that's the real saving grace. We got, I think the wind's supposed to come down a little bit tomorrow. It piped up a little bit this afternoon, but tomorrow I think we're going to be good for the whole day. But I'm only doing a half day tomorrow, so I'm good with that. I can I can get a little bit of rest for a change.
So
I think
your grouper fishing's good, and your reds and trout and snooker's still doing strong.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes. Red, I haven't actually been targeting redfish lately. I see some pictures and some reports from guys all over Tampa Bay that are catching them, but it's not like everywhere you go. It's like certain areas, kind of like the trout. They're holed up with this low tide. These fish are falling off into big potholes and channel edges and things like that, and they're not going far when the tide comes in. They'll come up in skinny water just to feed and to get a little bit warmer. Water temperature's still down a little bit. It's still in the low to mid 60s. So, I'm looking forward maybe to a little bit higher than that tomorrow. We got, I think, 75 to 77 is what our high is supposed to be. So it's going to be a good day, I'm sure.
Gotcha. So. Excellent. All right, buddy. We appreciate the heck out of the report. Let us know what goes on as that water temperature continues to fall. We're going to have a front later this week that's going to cool us back down. So we look forward to talking with you next Monday, if that's okay.
Yes, sir. We'll catch you then.
Thank you, Ray. We appreciate it so much. Our thanks to Ray Markham for a great West Central report. We're going to head up into the Big Bend and check on William Toney, the mayor of Homosassa. Is he skinning a buck tonight, William?
Nope, but I did skin I did skin some trout and redfish today. It was I've given up on hunting, not permanently, but I just had to walk away just a little bit.
Yep.
It was getting to the point I think I was trying too hard.
I've been there. Yep.
Been there, and I got plenty of time. We got plenty of time here on the Big Bend, for hunting. But I can tell you what, the fishing has been good since last Friday. And we had a mild front come through today with a little bit of rain this morning. Turned out to be a nice day. We're expecting another front by the weekend, midweek, somewhere around Thursday. But right now, the gag grouper bite is just incredible. I've seen some fish come to the table, 37 inches, 30 inches, 34 inches, 8 foot of water. Just crazy.
My goodness, that's good fishing.
Yes, it is. Especially, it goes with the regs are, starting to kick in and work, the 2 fish limit. And over time, it takes a little bit, for things to start happening. And I think the regs have really helped our area with that. And when, if you can keep 2 fish that are, 130 and 137, I mean, how much more cleaning do you want to do?
That's right. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, Kevin. How long has the 2 fish limit been in place?
I'm thinking they went to the 2 fish limit. It's been 5 or 6 years. It's been a while.
Okay.
And it creeped up. It went down to 2 fish, and minimum size I believe was 22 inches. And I believe 2 or 3 years ago they went up to the 24-inch mark, which left a lot of us inshore out of the scenario. It was rare to catch a 24-incher in 6 to 10 foot of water.
Right.
But now it comes down to they're catching them. Now, I don't really do grouper fishing. I don't have a reef permit on this side of the state. If you're a licensed captain and you're past the 9-mile mark, you got to have that reef permit.
Right.
Now, I'm permitted to keep grouper within 9 miles. But a lot of the anglers in this area that are targeting these grouper are getting them within that 9-mile range in state waters, casting plugs and using live pinfish on our shallow rocks. So 1 of 2 things have happened. This is just a year that is phenomenal for grouper, but I'm going to say attribute it to that 2-person limit and the way the seasons have been going. A lot of our captains here on the Big Bend that do offshore charters are saving fuel. They're also not, having to run out there. And if it's a blown out day, when you're having to go to 30 foot, when you only have to go to 12 foot, you can get that trip in. And same with every other angler out there that has a few good numbers that weren't producing in the past. They're plucking a good grouper off of it out there, casting and targeting them.
I see. I was going to ask you, how much do you think the number of boats in your area has gone up in the last 5 years?
I would almost say tripled. tripled in amount. Say, just for easy numbers, if 10 grouper boats left the ramp on a Saturday morning, we're seeing on a good Saturday like this past weekend, 25, 30 boats.
Okay.
So the pressure is on.
Is it time to go to one per person?
I don't know. I would say let's see what next year brings. If the fish is still hanging on and, like they are right now, I'd say leave it as it is. We had the same scenario with our redfish, and I was still for one fish per angler on the redfish. Mm-hmm. And in our area, when they started messing with the grouper regulations, it seemed like they just threw in, okay, you guys could keep 2 redfish. And I didn't understand why. It was just kind of out of the blue. I know different parts of the state, they catch more redfish than us, or, maybe that they just wanted 2 redfish. But what I found in the 3 years that they had the Big Bend area 2 fish per angler was me trying to put my clients on their 4 or 6 redfish, whatever it was, in a longer period of time than when it was just 1 redfish, because I could go up and we could catch their legal redfish, one a person, and catch a few and release them and be done for the day with redfish and move on to another fish. But as it went on, another year or 2 down the road, we were having to work harder to catch redfish. Then it finally went back to 1. And just like today, it was, pick and choose the one you want. I had 3 anglers. I said, all right, we got the 2 in the box. You guys gamble on your 3rd one. Behind door number 1, you want the next cast to catch a bigger one, or you want to keep this one? So, that adds a new dimension to fishing. And in a way, I think that maybe the grouper is going that way. And, I haven't heard complaints. All I've heard is how good a season it's been for our offshore captains and the guides who target and the anglers who target grouper. So I think it's a win. And if it holds out again next year, we may be in a good pattern. So, that we'll just have to see what the future brings. But right now, it's probably been one of the better years that I've seen and heard of the anglers in our area here on the Big Bend.
I just feel like we need to be aware of what's happened while we were busy fishing. I'm going to tell you, we have a wreck off of Jacksonville here where the cobia showed up in mass a few days ago, and a friend of mine went Saturday morning. William, it's 28 miles offshore. He pulled up to it at 7:45 in the morning. Would you like to pick a number? How many boats were at anchor on this good size wreck?
If everybody left at that, I would say if it's public number, there's probably already a dozen people there.
21.
Oh, man.
21 boats either.
Halfway guess.
Yeah. 21 boats either on the anchor or on the trolling motor spot locked, jigging cobia.
Wow.
William, we got to be aware that that's what's going on. And I'm not.
Oh, yeah. I've always been an advocate. I'm old school. No power pole. I got an anchor, no trolling motor. I have a push pole. And, that's just the way I grew up fishing, and that's my stick. That's what I like to do. I've always felt, the smarter anglers become, the less fish can hide.
Yep. We
make boats that run shallower. We make boats that run further. We make electronics that tell you everything, even to wipe your butt if you didn't. So, when it comes down to it, and the more people that have that, the more pressure fish get. So, and sometimes you got to tighten regulations because of that. It's overfishing's been a thing that I've seen and been a part of probably my whole life. And the more people that are doing it, the more pressure there is on the fish. And, we have to make it so that we have this for our future generations.
William, I can watch my scope, watch the lines come up and down, okay, and watch
That's crazy.
and watch a shark or an amberjack or something close in on somebody's beeliner that they're reeling up.
That's just crazy.
It is. It's nuts. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Just crank. You better crank fast. He's all over you. I'm watching.
I'm watching it right here.
I'm watching it on the scope, and we've just got to be. I'm not tree hugging here. I'm just saying we got to be aware of how many more fish we're taking than what we have taken. But anyway, I'm not going to get on a soapbox.
I'm right in there with you. And just not to get away from it, just one last thing is, I grew up with my grandfather and everybody. When we grouper fished, we would get out to marker 2 off of Homosassa, and my grandfather had his wristwatch on, and he would run it at a certain speed, and he'd run a certain time on his watch. And when we shut down, that's when you started fishing. And eventually you would come across a rock or a piece of bottom, and we catch a grouper, and then you came back in. And you would never touch that rock again in 100 years if you went out there and kept doing it. But, it would come close to it. It may be the same one, or maybe not. Maybe you're 100 yards off and there's a new rock. But, there is one rock I have out here, and it's funny. Until that beer can just disintegrated from the bottom, I could run up with my GPS and set my boat and look over on the starboard side, and there's that beer can.
I'll be
every
darned.
time.
That's cool.
So,
that's way cool.
That's how close you can get.
Yep,
so,
know.
Here it is. We gotta watch ourselves. Do we want to catch fish, or do we just want to hunt fish?
Well,
and catching is part of the game and having fun.
Yep. My whole thing has been, we now have the technology to fish the ocean dry. We have to work backwards from that. Okay, we gotta work. Now we gotta work our way back to where we sustain it. Cap, I appreciate it so much. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
I'll be here, and I'm gonna try to hunt. So maybe I'll have a good story. Maybe I'll be skinning more than some redfish or trout. I'd like to skin me a buck, but we've still got time. So it's going to happen. I feel it. I know it.
When that backstrap shows up at my front door, I'll believe it. Thank you, William.
All right, bud.
Appreciate you, brother. Bye-bye. All right, thanks to William Toney for a great Big Bend report. Now we're going to pull out into Northwest Florida and find out what the captain of KC Sport Fishing, Kevin Lanier, is up to. Kevin, are you with us?
Yeah, Captain Rick, I'm with you. How you doing?
I'm doing outstanding. I'm like you. I'm recovering from long fishing trips over the weekend. I don't bounce back as fast as I used to.
That's funny. I'm right behind you, both in age and not being able to bounce it back.
Everything hurt this morning, Kevin. If I'd have had hair, it'd have hurt this morning.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I messed up. I grabbed the jig rod on Friday, and all day Saturday I'm going, man, my shoulder hurts.
Kevin, are you into that slow pitch jigging at all?
I just started doing it, and I am amazed at the results so far.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, just to give you an example, we were out Friday and we were grouper fishing. I had guys that wanted just to go and target grouper, so we're out there doing that. So, as you know, grouper fishing can be slow from time to time. So I pitch out a slow pitch jig and let it drop to the bottom, make one lift and drop it, and immediately I hooked 5 fish on 5 consecutive drops. They were all legal size red snapper. We released every one of them, but I was amazed and so finally I put it down because I said, I'm going to save this for a little while later, and dropped it a little bit later in the day. The result, not quite as bang, 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 but I still wound up hooking 3 more fish.
Yeah. I got to try it. I've done the regular jigging quite a bit. I haven't tried this, but boy, the guys that try it say it's deadly. Well, tell me about your weekend. Give me a report.
Well, we went grouper fishing on Friday. We wound up with 3 nice keeper grouper in the boat, 2 gags and a red. We lost a couple of just absolute rod benders that we fought, and how it goes. You get them off the bottom, and all of a sudden, ping, they come off.
Oh, yeah.
And, breaks your heart, but, at least the guys were enjoying the fight. We had some shark action during our grouper fishing, so that at least got our blood going for a little bit. Then we had a couple of days of vermilion snapper fishing. I do trips with the Tyndall Air Force Airmen up here, and on Saturday we went out 6 of them, wound up getting 60 vermilion snapper in 2 hours.
That's a lot of vermilions. Isn't it funny how it just seems like vermilions just keep coming. I mean, we put too much pressure on groupers sometimes, and we all know about the snapper collapse of the late 80s, early 90s. But vermilions, they're prolific. They just seem to keep coming, don't they?
Well, it's amazing. It was really amazing to me. It was rougher than snot on Saturday. Again, they were spot off on the forecast. So it was quite ugly out there, but the good Lord graced us with a hot vermilion bite. So, it made it worth it. The guys got back to the dock. They were tired, but they said, what a blast. We went back out on yesterday, and the water was just absolutely wonderful. We got into the vermilions again. We didn't get as many, and the dolphin found us yesterday. So that was kind of how our day went.
Oh, you're talking about the mammal dolphin.
Yeah, I'm
pulling off
the wrong kind of dolphin.
Yeah, pulling off your vermilions. Hey, Kevin, I had a whole vermilion for lunch today that I caught yesterday. I scored both sides of him and stuffed it with onions. I stuffed his stomach cavity with a crab cake and baked him. What's your go-to vermilion recipe?
Oh, my go-to vermilion recipe is to fillet, no matter what size it is, cut the rib bones out and make 2 strips with them, skin them, and I pan fry them in a little panko breadcrumbs and egg, and we make fish tacos out of them.
Oh, yeah. That'll work every time. There's no doubt. Well, Kevin, that's a great report. We appreciate it. Have you heard anything from the inshore guys?
Inshore guys have still been getting sheep's head. Not as much activity this week, but the sheep's head are still hanging around, seem to be congregating a little bit early for us, but the guys are getting out there. The whiting are on the beach. And no reds or trout this week to report from, but there is activity for anybody that wants to fish from the bank or in the intercoastal or the canals.
Gotcha. Okay, good deal. Thank you. We appreciate it, Cap. Thank you so much, Kevin.
All right, we'll talk to you next week.
Okay, buddy. Take care. Captain Kevin Lanier from KC Sport Fishing. All right, thanks to Kevin Lanier for a great report in the Panhandle. Now, you can't leave Florida till we go all the way out west, and that's where we're going to check in with Captain Tyler Massey, one of the western points of Florida. Tyler, how we doing?
We're doing good over here, Rick. How are y'all?
Good. How's your fishing, Cap?
Fishing pretty good. We had, still mostly inshore stuff. A few guys made offshore. I heard some good reports. So it's a good little mixture. We're just the weather's the biggest factor for us, with these little fronts and the wind pushing through. So, we've been dealing with that. But inshore, the sheephead bite actually picked up pretty good. Mostly fishing on bridges. Early in the winter, we catch them, mostly on the bridge structures, and then they move towards the pass in the springtime. But the fishing form's been pretty good. Anglers are catching a few, mostly eating on fiddler crabs, just real close to piling, straight up and down. And that's been pretty effective. So, again, while they're fishing for those, they're also catching black drum and redfish doing the same thing. So, fishing the bridge pilings is a good thing to do right now.
Now, Tyler, let me ask you a question. Do your guys over there scrape the pilings?
Yeah, they sure do. And, in a lot of kayak guys, and, you don't need a big boat or anything, but the kayaks will lay right up against the pilings and scrape them, and that's a really effective way to fish them. But yeah, scraping it definitely works over here pretty well. Essentially,
and so what people know what we're talking about. The best thing I ever found was a floor scraper, like you scrape the tile off a floor with, and you scrape the pilings off, or scrape the oysters, off the sides of the pilings and barnacles. And what that does is it essentially sets up a chum line for you. It chums the sheep's head and brings them to your particular piling. And that's become real popular here in Northeast Florida. But be careful. It's illegal to do it at a private dock. And you also cannot do it and take the scrapings with you to somewhere else. You can scrape a bridge piling, but that's where you got to fish then. You can't stick them in a bag and carry them around. If you are caught carrying oysters in your boat, you better have a receipt for where you bought them.
Yeah, that's true. So same for up here. I think most people just try to stick with scraping, where they are, and mostly just the big bridges where people are fishing. So, definitely something to think about there when you're out there fishing for that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Anything else going on?
Yeah, so the offshore, I did actually get a pretty good offshore report. I think I said before, the Okaloosa County and kind of started this SPAD things they're putting offshore. It's just big floating fish aggregating devices, and they're about 60 miles away from Pensacola Pass, so it takes a pretty good weather to get out there. But I did hear a report there was they've only been there for maybe since the end of the summer, maybe August, and there was a boat that I heard a report from. They went 1 for 3 on blue marlin.
Wow.
And 1 for 1 on white marlin. And then they also caught some tuna. And it was a pretty good trip. They had a couple wahoo bites that cut them off because they were live bait fishing there with live bonitas or little blackfins. But so that's a pretty good offshore report. And it's pretty accessible for most people. It is 60 miles, but on a decent day, most twin outboard boats can reach that.
Yep. Yeah, they can. I haven't been 60 miles offshore since yesterday, so I can promise you they can.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that's a good. It's kind of a new thing, and they're going to add some more, and they're listed on the Okaloosa County Public Recs and Reef site. So that's they're for the public to use, and it's a great spot for boats not to run all the way to oil rigs or further out. So it's going to be a good fishery, I think.
Good deal. Good deal. Tyler, we appreciate it so much. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
Yep, I'll be here. We'll see y'all.
Captain Tyler Massey from out in the Panhandle. Boy, I tell you what, it's been a quick trip around the state tonight. There's been some good. There's been some bad. Up in the Northeast quadrant, the offshore fishing isn't great other than trigger fish and vermilion. The grouper fishing's okay. There's some muttons, but inshore has been spectacular. The redfish, the trout, and the sheepshead have all been doing very, very well. As you come down to the East Central, that's where you get into trouble. Jim Ross said there's been a fish kill in the Mosquito in the Indian Lagoon. That's because of the dead algae, and it's just tragic. I don't know what we're going to do about it, but that's a topic for another day. You're going down to Stewart, and we get the word that the sail fishing is fair. It's not spectacular, 1 to 3 bites a day. Lots of kingfish all up and down the coast. But down in Stewart, not the numbers of sails stacking up yet because it just hasn't stayed cold enough yet. They'll be there. Don't worry. You get on further south. How about Nick Stancic on another run on swordfish? Had a 188-pounder yesterday. That's a great fish. Steve Dahl is sounding the alarm. There's a red tide in southwest Florida. That's not good news. Now, the guys been fishing outside of it have done well. Triple tail and grouper fishing's been good, but we got to keep an eye on that red tide. We don't want that getting any worse. Greg Stamper said he saw patches of it, had to deal with a little itchy throat, had to deal with a little watery eyes. Nothing serious. Now, you get on up to the West Central, it's gone. Fishing's good. The grouper fishing is fantastic. The inshore fishing's been quite good for trout particularly. You going up into the Big Bend, William Toney is fired up. He said the grouper fishing there also has been fantastic, and he's doing very, very well. You can pick your redfish, he says. You work your way out west, a lot of vermilion snapper for Kevin Lanier. They've been biting good, and he's done well on grouper. Not spectacular. The big red snapper making it difficult for him to catch too many grouper. Tyler Massey, a new fad is off of Okaloosa County. How about this? There's blue marlin on it already. It went out in August. They've caught blues and whites there so far. So all in all, it was a good week fishing in Florida because the weather was pretty good. This next week coming up, I'm not so sure about. We're going to have to wait and see. One thing I do know, we'll be back next week to check it out with another Florida Sportsman Action Spotter. The Florida Sportsman Action Spotter is brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara, Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat span offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Hey, couple things. First off, if you've got a question for our Action Spotter, we had a question this week about tournaments. Do tournaments hurt fish with the amount of pressure we're putting on them? That's kind of open for debate. The general consensus is tournaments keep people involved in fishing. It's going to be a slippery slope if we start banning them. But we all have to start being aware of how many fish we're taking and take what we need, leave the rest for the next trip. And if you've got a buddy that's not catching fish, turn him on to the Florida Sportsman Action Spotter podcast, and maybe we can help him too. We need all the subscribers we can get. You've been around long enough to know that that's what makes the world go around when it comes to podcasts. Hey, for Florida Sportsman Action Spotter podcast, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and until next week, we'll see you on the rip.